Good.
All right, guys, so now we're going to work on using the power handsaw, portable power handsaw. We've got a 7¼ inch Makita to cut this rafter that we talked about in class. And I want to show you a couple different cuts, how we make them safely and as accurately as we can, okay? So what we got going on here, I've already put the marks on here using our math that we did in the classroom. 30-inch run, 9-inch pitch, and worked our math down through. So I put the marks on here to kind of save a little bit of time on this video. But I did want to reinforce with you guys, just keep in mind, when we do our calculations, it's all based on the right triangle. We got rise, run, the diagonal, which is our hypotenuse, and then we have pitch, which is our angle of opening off of our run, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly mark these out on our 9-inch common. We use the pivot side of our square. We've done this all week. This is just kind of a review. But I mark that as my plumb cut up on my hip rafter, which is up at this point where it's going to install. Now I'm going to come down and mark my bird's mouth on my 9-inch, on my common again, okay? And then that's my bird's mouth to the outside of my wall, and then I'm going to mark my overhang. 9-inch on the common, mark that out. Now this roof's traveling at a 37-degree angle on this 912. So when I do the complementary angle coming back to create my bird's mouth, I'm going to hold 53 degrees because it's 90 minus 37 equals the 53 degrees. And then I'm going to slide down along here when I hit my 3.5, which is my wall plate. That's how I'll establish my seat cut on my bird's mouth. Okay, so let's go ahead and make these cuts. Make sure you keep your eye protection on. Always clamp your stock down. There's a couple different ways to clamp your stock. I'm using some quickie grip clamps. You can also nail it with some common nails. And naturally, you can have your partner or your buddy hold it. Once we start cutting with this saw, using a bevel, which right now the saw is set on 90 degrees. When we cut on a bevel, we're going to need to free that up, get our table set at 45 degrees. Okay, and for these cuts, you almost have to have your saw set to the full depth. Somebody changed the depth on me, so we're going to get that. That's the depth adjustment back here. This is the bevel adjuster. Okay, so now when I cut here, there's a little tattletale on the front of your saw to start on your line. But when you cut for a bevel, I suggest you look down through this window right here to see your cut. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to make this cut. Okay, so that's a compound miter. It's a plumb cut and a 45-degree bevel cut at the same time. That should marry right into the side of the hip rafter to install this hip jack rafter. So now I'm going to put it back on a 90-degree angle. And when you guys cut with a power saw, I suggest that you watch your blade on the 90-degree side from the back side, okay? And when anytime you're cutting an angle or a bevel cut or a miter cut on these saws, you're going to have to swing that guard up, and it's going to expose the blade. So you got to be very careful. This is why your stock has to be held in place. When we cut a 90-degree piece and we cross cut, we can just let the guard roll over. It'll come right back on itself. We can hold in our normal location to keep good handle on the saw. But when we start cutting bevels or angles, we need to have control of the guard. The guard's got to come up, and our stock has to be held in place. So that when we cut, now I can overcut this a little bit. You're going to see me run by that cut a little bit. But I'm watching my line out the side of my blade. Did you notice how I rolled up on the shoe? You want to pivot on the shoe. If you lift straight up, the saw is going to bind and cause kickback. Okay, so I overcut. As long as on a rafter I maintain at least 2 inches of stock, I should be pretty solid, enough to hold that tail or that overhang in place. Okay, so I'm going to come and make my other plumb cut on my bird's mouth. Okay, and then I just allow that piece to fall out of there. Okay, we would do the same to make the plumb cut on the tail which I've done already. I don't have a whole lot of time here, so this is one that I've cut previously. So when we go to install this, I use one of your hammers. Probably should have had that ready. But what I want to do is I'm going to hold this hip jack rafter right in tight to my wall. I'm going to tack it in there once I roll it on line, pretty close to where I need it. So that's pretty much naturally, put a lot more nails in, but that's pretty much the way we're cutting and installing these hip jack rafters. Any questions? Cut.